Those rusty fence posts, good result of my calloused hands, like the lonely life.
Howdy, folks. I'm James Talley. Welcome to the Rusty Fence Post Podcast, an all-breed podcast where we talk about everything dogs. Today, I'm joined by Nick Gilliland with Nite Kennel. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Hey, James, man, I appreciate it. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, sir. I appreciate you coming on and being a part of the show this morning. I look forward to it. And my first question for you is, it's funny, my grandpa, some of my most favorite memories of my grandfather was, he ran hounds years ago. And this was, he was in the 70s and 80s. He was an older man in the 1980s, but some of my most fondest memories of him was going with him and running hounds, and he ran coyotes and raccoons, and I work a lot of nights, and I ran across your YouTube channel, and you were I found it real interesting to the way you ran your dogs and stuff, and of course it's a whole lot more high tech with the GPS collars and all that kind of stuff. But did you grow up with dogs, working dogs? How did you get into the whole hound thing?
Yeah, I pretty much I grew up I didn't grow up in the coon hunting scene so much, but my dad has always been a rabbit hunter. He loves beagles. So some of my first pictures when I was 2 or 3 years old, Dad had a couple litter of pups, and they were all out playing in the grassy yard, and I'm laying out there on a little blanket and they're wallering me, so it's kind of, I guess you could say from early age, some of my first memories, they all involved a beagle of some kind. And my grandfather, he was a World War II veteran, and he drove a tank for Patton's Third Army. And the only thing he ever really hunted was he was a coon hunter with hounds. And so, he was a major impact on my life. And growing up, I was just listening to all the stories that he was always telling me about going coon hunting and stuff. And we didn't know it at the time. We know it now looking back, but he basically had PTSD and he couldn't sleep at night. And he was a family man, pulling 12-hour shifts all day long. So there wasn't really time to take on deer hunting or anything during the day. And he couldn't sleep at night because, of the PTSD. So he would go coon hunting, and that was his thing. So he's able to get some kind of what we call timber therapy with hounds and still function as a family man and provide for his family. And so that's all he ever did. He tell me about it all the time, and it was very romantic sounding to me. And, I fell in love with that, but just for the fact that he was doing it. So once I, come up around 10, 12 years old, I had a cousin who basically felt the same way as I did toward our grandfather. And he was a coon hunter, and he took me a few times, and, I was pretty well hooked on it. So, I grew up around hounds. And then once I got to where I was in high school, right before I started driving, that's when I actually got my first coon hound. But definitely raised around hounds. It's been imprinted on me. And even to this day, our house dog, he's a basset hound. I had to have a hound in the house,
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you kind of covered my second and third question about, how old you were when you got your first hound and who was most influential. Did you accompany your grandfather a lot on these hunts?
Well, actually, I never really, when he was in good health, he 2 days before I was born, he was operating a crane for a company, and the cable broke. Somehow or another, ended up flipping the crane. He got really bad hurt. So by the time I had come along, he was disabled. He couldn't really coon hunt anymore. So it was all basically, so like I said, I went with my cousin and stuff. And then my dad bought me a black and tan coon hound. It was probably 3 or 4 years old, if I remember correctly. That was about age 12, 13, something like that. Dad bought me that hound. His name was Rambo. And I don't remember much about the dog except I never remembered treating a coon with him. he was that kind of dog. But that kind of kept me going. And then I traded and kept a couple of Walker dogs right after that. And the main reason I did that was because people ask me all the time. I run Walkers now, but people ask me why and why do I prefer that breed. It's not necessarily a preference in abilities. I think pretty much all hounds are created equal in ability. But growing up with my dad having tricolored beagles, having a tricolored dog feels like home. So, when I was like 14 or so, that's when I started getting Walker dogs. And when I was 16, I actually bought my first hound myself, that dad didn't help me acquire any, and it was a Walker hound. So
That's awesome. I know your grandfather, had a significant role, and your dad ran beagles. Was there anybody else that kind of was a mentor that kind of helped you coming up, kind of shaping what you were going to do in the hunting your hounds?
Yeah, I've had several mentors along the way, as I was in different phases. Of course, my grandfather kind of lit this fire. And I will say this, if you got time, I'll tell you a little backstory on my grandfather. For you asked me if I'd ever really hunted with him. I will say on up in his life, and I was probably in my late 20s. I'm 38 now. I did have the opportunity one time. He was completely not able to get out and walk in the woods, but we had caught a caged coon, and I told my father, I said, if you'll bring my grandfather down here to the farm where I was staying at the time, I said, what we're going to do is we'll turn this cage coon loose across this field, and you can just pull the truck up in the field, roll the windows down, open the door. I said, we'll turn that cage coon loose, give it a few minutes, and then we'll cut the dogs on the scent, and maybe my grandfather can, watch these dogs take off across this valley. If we're lucky, the coon will climb a tree when it gets down there to the river bottom, and maybe we can even drive the truck down there beside the edge of the field, And it seems like anytime you ever make a plan for something like that, it never goes to plan. But this one time, I'll never forget when we cut that coon loose. I mean, he went run down there, climbed the very first tree he could come to, right on the edge of this hayfield. We give it about 15 balls standing outside the truck. He can't get far from the door. And we cut the dogs, and he's sitting down there patting the dog on the butt as we unleash him, and it takes off. And I'll never forget the big grin. He was ear to ear grin, as that hound took off, found that scent about 30 yards in front of the truck there, let out a bawl. I mean, my grandpa was tickled to death. This is first time he'd been around any kind of hunting, probably in 20 years, any kind of hound hunting. And he was able to throw the lights on the dogs. He witnessed them run across down through there, load up on that tree, put out a big old ball and go to chopping. I mean, he was just giddy as could be. I'm surprised he didn't take off, trying to make his way down the field. But dad loaded him back in the truck. We was able to pull the truck down there right underneath the tree. And he's kind of set out on the running board of the truck there, and we put a flashlight in his hand. He's able to shine up a tree, see the coon up there, and of course, being sporting, we didn't want to harvest the coon or anything. We left it up there, but it was just it was really fitting. That was the really one time I've ever really gotten to take my grandfather hunting, and I was able to do it with my dogs on my land, and it was, to me, it was like a full circle. You raised me, helped raise me, teach me about this. You lit the fire at me. I was able to take him out and show him, what I've been able to accomplish off of what he had inspired so many years before. So I just want to share that little story with you. But yeah, when you talk about mentors, I did have several along the way. He was one. My dad was one. My dad was a real big mentor on the maintenance of a dog. My dad is extremely, very well takes care of his animals, as far as his kennel care, veterinary care, even, grooming, things of that nature. So dad's always been a very good influence on that. Then growing on up, my cousin, he's the one who actually started taking me coon hunting. And so he really helped push the fire, and he had some really good dogs. And so I was able to kind of see, this is what we need to accomplish. This is what it's all about. It's not about killing any or harvesting any game. It's about the hounds, the fellowship, the fun, you know. And then once I got to a point where, you know, in the early stages, you kind of, a lot of times you'll just buy dogs that are already trained, I would say. And because you just want to get out in the woods and have a good time. But once I got, you know, on up to around 30 years old or so, I wanted to actually really train more from the pup up and build a dog, I guess you would say, lack of a better word. So my local hound supply place here in town, there's a lady that works in there, and I won't put her name out because I hadn't got permission, but she works in there pretty well, runs the place. I was in there one day, mentioned to her, I said, I'd really like to go these coonhound competitions that I keep hearing about. She said, oh yeah, you ought to give it a try. She said, my husband, his name is Kim. I know he won't mind me telling his name. He's my best friend. He goes all these. She said, why don't you meet down at his clubhouse? I'll tell him you're coming. You can spectate. So I went down there that evening and spectated on a competition hunt that he was handling a dog in. And I thought, well, this is really cool. You know, I want to get in this. I said, hey, you mind if I go coon hunt with you some more after this sometime? And he said, yeah, sure. So we just kind of struck off a friendship and started going hunting with him more and more. And when I bought a younger dog that I needed training, I had noticed hunting with Kim that his dogs seemed to handle a lot better than anybody I had previously hunted with. They almost handled like a house dog would when they're in the woods, as far as obedience and coming to when called and walking out of the woods without a lead. I mean, just all these little things that once he had trained his hound made the hunt just so much sweeter because it was easier and more pleasurable. You know, it took some of the stress parts out of it, the way the dog behaved, I guess you would say. Right. Plus they were amazing hound dogs. You know, they did their job too. So, I mean, he was really good that, you know, it could be 11 o'clock at night. My dog had treed. I'm standing at the bottom of a tree, dog's barking in the background. I call up Kim. He's either in the woods or he's on the way home from a hunt, or maybe he's, you know, sitting there on the couch. He answered the phone. Hey man, my dog's done this. What do you think? What should I do? And he was just always answering the phone, always patient, and just, he was there for me. You know, he was the real big final building block to kind of put things in the perspective where I am today.
Man, that's awesome. And I loved hearing that story about your grandfather. That, man, I know that was something he loved and you'll always remember. That's really awesome. I know you touched base on you know, you run walkers. Is there, and you kind of touch base on, you know, your dad runs beagles and the color, but was there any other specific reason why you ran that breed of hound?
Well, it's funny. In my small world living in North Carolina, walkers, nobody around here at that time really ran them. I don't really know why. Well, you know, Plot is the North Carolina state dog, and there seemed to be a lot of black and tans. I knew a lot of guys that had them. My cousin did. And something in me, I've always been the guy that likes to do what everybody else is not doing. My whole family drove Fords, so I wanted to Dodge, you know, and things of that nature. So it was like, you know, everybody else says this dog's the way to go. I'm going to go the other way. And then after I got him and kind of met Kim, he had a walker, and learned what competition hunting was, I found out walker's probably the most popular used breed that there is, you know, but in my little circle of where I lived, it wasn't, and I didn't know that. So that's kind of, I guess, a little rebelliousness. I don't know how you would put that.
Right. What is the difference between a running walker and a training walker?
Well, I don't really.
Or is there a difference? I've just heard that terminology.
I've heard it a couple of times, but I haven't heard a lot. And what I would assume, this is just an assumption, so some of your listeners are probably experts in this, could fill us in better on this. But, you know, the tree and walker is running and tracking a game that actually climbs a tree. So, you know, it could be bear, could be some kind of cat, raccoon. I mean, you can train for possums, whatever climbs a tree. I would assume a running walker would be more towards like the foxhound. You know, the tree and walker, from what I understand, came from the foxhound lineage. And of course, the foxes don't tree. They either go ground or bay, or I guess you just run them. So a lot of times a foxhound won't actually stand up on a tree and bark or bay up a tree. They're a chase dog, from the way I understand. Now that could be wrong. So
that makes sense. Do you, I know you obviously run your dogs a lot. Do you have any kind of particular conditioning program for them? I mean, do you just keep them out in the woods? And obviously, nutrition would be important for a working dog. What do you feed your dogs?
Yeah. Well, that first part on the whole conditioning thing, my dogs stay outside year round, my hunting dog. I try to keep them in a above ground kennel if I can. I like to keep them out of the mud. But I like them out living in the elements pretty much. I've got a fan that blows on them in the hottest part of the summer, kind of keeps some air moving, keep them cool down, fresh water and that nature. And of course I've got a little heat lamp. If it gets down really cold, kind of put a heat lamp on the doghouse, keep them warm in the winter. But I feel like that when it comes to running hounds, I got buddies that have them as house dogs too, and they can definitely do both roles. Put that out there. You can have a hound that's an amazing hunting dog and be a house dog, in the evenings when you need to be. I feel like if you live in extreme climates, though, it's best to kind of let them acclimate to them and stay acclimated to the climate. So when they go out and hunt in it, they're not as shocked by it, I guess you would say. So that for that reason, I do have my hounds live outside. As far as nutrition and things of that nature, I pretty much just use regular dog food. I actually use Value Pack. I've got a friend who works for them, and it's grain-free food, and I've been using it now for about 6 years. Never had a single issue of it. Raised several dogs off of it. I'm not saying it's the best food out there. Don't get me wrong, but it has worked well for me. So that, and then just make sure you keep a really good check, going to the vet, take your dog once or twice a year just to get things checked out. One big thing I'm a proponent of is I've seen a lot of guys go out here and hunt a dog one night and they just come load them up in a truck, come to the house, put them in the box, and they're done for the night till the next time. And I'm a big proponent when you come back from a tree and things have calmed down, dog gets up on the tailgate, just kind of take your hands, run through, massage your muscles, run your hand under the belly, grab the ears, kind of lift the gums, and just check for, is there anything possibly bleeding? Is there a sore spot when you touch them that they flinch? Just kind of give a little rub over. And because I've actually found several things like that, on a dog, just by kind of giving a little once over. Something that, if you say a dog, I actually had my Hyde dog that I've got now, his name's Hyde. We were hunting in Arkansas one night, and he actually kind of impaled himself. He was running and a stob hit him right in the middle of the chest and run between his chest cavity and the skin. It ran all the way down to the middle of his stomach. It was basically just right between the skin and his bones. Well, we gave him the rub down that night and he was fine. Well, the next morning we got up and went to go give him some water and food. And I went to kind of give a little rub down. And when I rubbed my hand under his chest, I felt a lump and he whimpered and the infection had already started. And it was one of the things, if I hadn't have been there, hadn't went out and hadn't checked it, you wouldn't have found it. And the vet right away, there was a major infection starting. They was able to go in there and cut it out, clean it, and he was fine. But it's one of the things, if you don't keep a really good check on your dog, things can go south really fast,
Exactly.
So kind of a preventative thing. I'm a big proponent of that. It helps that my wife, she's a vet tech. So, I come home and say, Hyde's got this going on. What do you think? So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like I was saying earlier, I ran across your YouTube channel and man, I really, just the way y'all did it and, taking your dogs out to the woods and you showed every aspect of it. And I really enjoyed that. How did the whole nightlife thing come about? I mean, how did y'all put all that together and come about with a YouTube channel?
Yeah, that whole thing was, it was kind of an accident, really. I I was going through a part of my life that was kind of a dark time, a little bit of depression and stuff. We all go through it, as men, we got to admit that we do. And yeah, I was really pouring myself into the woods every day after work just to get out in the woods with my dog. Was timber therapy. We throw it turn around a lot, but it's true. It really helps for a man to get out and enjoy his hobby, whether it's fishing or whatever, and that's what I was doing. And my dog Hyde at the time, he was 18 months, 20 months old or something. And he was making some really big progress, and I was really enjoying the way he was turning out. So I thought, well, I'm just going to pull out my phone and start recording this stuff and really just have it on my phone. So I started doing that. And then somebody's like, oh, you ought to just throw it up on YouTube, just put it out there. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. I said, well, think of it. That's kind of like a online video file. 50 years from now, if YouTube's still around, maybe I can go back and watch these videos, and kind of reminisce, because my grandfather had always mentioned, man, if I wish I could hunt with that dog one more time or whatever, So it's kind of like later. So I started putting these videos on there, and I downloaded some kind of app on my phone for editing, and I just kind of enjoyed the editing part, putting a little bit of music to it or whatever. And it was all for me, it was a selfish thing. And then we were sitting there with about 300, 400 subs, which, if YouTube is not much at all. And somebody messaged me on Facebook or something, and it was, I don't remember who it was, but I remember it was someone pretty young and new to coon hunting, and they asked me a question. Says, I seen your dog did this. How do you train that, or how you teach that? And I was like, man, the only thing I could do was take the knowledge that my mentor had given me and copy paste it basically, over into the message with this guy and say, this is what I did. And it worked for me. Hopefully it works for you. And, several more people started asking me questions. And next thing you know, I was getting a little feedback. I tried that worked, so on and so forth. And so then I found like evidently there's a need here. It just kind of clicked in my mind. I said, there's some other YouTube channels out there that are showing the hunts, which is entertaining and fun. But evidently there's a need here for instructional type stuff, or in illustrations. And then I was having people ask me about what gear I was using. So I was like, well, there's a need for guys to show what gear they're running. And what I had found was one dude's like, hey man, I want to know about your tracking system. Before I go spend $1,000 on this new system, I'd like to know a little more about it. So I'm like, well, dang, if I can take the time to show guys how I trained my dog, this is not the way to train, but how I did it, or what my gear is before they go drop gear or whatever it is. If I can do that and put that video up and help them, I want to, and that's when the channel really started taking off, was when we were providing a lot of valuable content that was helping people out, not just entertaining people, and so we pretty well adopted entertain, educate, and help you evolve as a houndsman as our motto. We wanted to entertain you with some hunts, educate you on what we use and how we did it. I'm not saying it's the best way, but that's how we did it. And like, we were literally watching guys that were like 18 years old get their first hound, 6 months old. They'd holler back at us a year later and say, we evolved, we were able to teach this dog this. We appreciate your help, so that's pretty well what took it off.
That's awesome. You touched base on just a second ago on the collar systems and stuff like that. I can remember, and my grandfather was an older man when I went hunting with him, but he worked for the county, our local county. So he worked around a lot of loud equipment and stuff. So his hearing wasn't real well, but when we would be out there, he would have an old oil funnel and he would have it stuck up to his ear. And I would always laugh because I got tickled with that, but he was listening, he was so hard of hearing. He was trying to hear those dogs bark and what direction was. So, like I said, that was the mid 80s, but, I guess my question is, how crucial is that equipment as far as, gear, as far as, collar systems? I know you had on your setups, you had the little blinking lights in case they got near the highway and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your circumstances, where you live, and so on and so forth. As far as what you would deem as essential, if in my opinion, I feel like in this day and age, there's some tracking systems out there now that are they range from $400 to $1,500. And they basically do the same thing. So now that they all used to run around 1,000, but now there's those cheaper options. To me, as a responsibility as a houndsman to look after the well-being and the welfare of my hound, I feel a necessity to invest in the tracking system, because now they're GPS. It used to be back in the 90s and all, we had the telemetry, which was basically just an antenna. You had a collar on a dog that sent out a radio frequency, and you would point that antenna in a direction and it would beep real fast when you're pointing in the general direction of the dog. But that didn't tell you how far the dog was. It didn't tell you whether the dog was near a road. It didn't tell you if the dog is in somebody's backyard. And now we got these GPS systems that literally you look at a screen. It can be on your phone. It can be on a separate handheld device. And there is a satellite image of the ground and a spot where your dog is. And you can literally see where he's been running. You see where you've been walking. So if you need to walk out of the woods, you get lost, you can. You can tell exactly how many yards away the dog is. He's 50 yards from a main highway, or he's in somebody's backyard that you don't. And it's just essential to me. You should have a tracking system at this point. And I have used it so many times to save my dog from getting in the road, or be able to drive around, save myself a mile walk when I can walk 200 if I just drive around this road. Or it's just so many things that a tracking system to me is absolutely essential to have. Then of course, having a good coon light. There's so many different brands out there today. I mean, the list goes on and on about gear. We can talk about wherever you want to talk about on gear wise. I don't know how deep you want to go on that.
Yes, sir. That's I know a good light, GPS. What other things would you recommend that, maybe just I don't know if bare essentials is the right word, but just, stuff you would recommend for somebody who is kicking around the idea of getting into it, or either they're hunting, but maybe this would be some good info for them for stuff that maybe they're missing in their gear.
Yeah. Well, we'll start really basic at first. You would be shocked at how many people will put a collar, put a nameplate on them. It's been nameplates on dogs have been around for 40 plus 50 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but basically a nameplate on a dog is just a brass nameplate that is riveted on the collar. It says your name. I put my name, I put my cell phone, and I put my dad's cell phone, because I've actually had dogs get loose at the house when I was at the beach and I couldn't go get my dog, but somebody called my dad's phone. He was home. He went and got my dog. And that's all it is. It's identification on your dog in case your dog gets loose. Somebody's got a phone number. If they find your dog, they can call. And it shocks me. I see on Facebook and stuff a lot, people who've lost a dog and I didn't have a collar on him, And so to me, that's very, very essential, because that's a $6 thing you can do. And then I go a little above that. I put a microchip in every single one of my dogs. So say my dog breaks his collar and gets loose, I've got, the microchips of, the dog warden or whatever you may call it, picks them up. The first thing they do is they check for a microchip. Every time a dog is taken to a shelter or the vet, if it's not in your possession, first thing they do is they check for a microchip, and that brings up my name and my number and my contact info, So I'd say that's your very bare essentials. Definitely need to do that. And you can do a microchip for like $30 or $40 one-time fee. Then you start getting into your actual hunting gear. Definitely a tracking system of some kind. That's where I would put my money first. Get the best one that you can afford. And then if you're going coon hunting, you got to have a lead. You got to have some way of leading your dog in and out of the woods. That's like $15 or something. And then you need a light because you're doing it at dark. You got to have some kind of headlamp or something that you can get you in the woods. Back in the day, we had the little $4 Rayovacs from Walmart, and
R-
that worked, But nowadays, there's all kinds of major high-powered headlamps. They're designed by coon hunters, made just for coon hunters, So you can get as wild into that as you want to. They range up to $400 or whatever. I would say find one that just fits you comfortably. You want a really good high-powered main beam to shine the tree and find the coon, and you want one that has a really good floodlight, walking light, we call it, so you can walk in and out of the woods.
Definitely, being able to see where you're going and what you're doing was certainly essential. What I know you mentioned bear earlier. Do you ever encounter any of those critters while you're out there hunting?
Yeah, I live in Western North Carolina. We got a pretty strong bear population here. I've come across bear a few times when I was walking through the woods. You'll come by them, you hear them chop their mouth or whatever. But it's never really been an issue. As far as my dogs running them, luckily I've been blessed. I've never had a dog start to run bear, so I've never had to break it for running bear. We run across the possums and the deer pretty often, and that's generally something you have to, when you're training a young dog, you have to break them from. Because a possum climbs a tree like a raccoon, and deer flee, and dogs' natural prey drive, pushes to want to chase that. But, I'd say the bear's there, but they don't bother us or anything. The only time the bear's a real major issue is here. Anytime you want to try to put out a feeder to attract the raccoons, anything that pulls in a raccoon is going to pull in a bear, and bears are just brutal on bait buckets and stuff like that. They just tear them all to pieces. So that's the major nuisance we have with them.
Yes, sir. All the years and the time you've been out in the woods hunting, have you ever seen anything just, I know when I say this, I'm joking, Bigfoot, but I'm kidding when I'm kidding when I say that, but have you ever just seen some things that just make you wonder, wow, what was that?
Yeah. I'm not a big believer in all that stuff, but there's been I've seen one thing. I've got a few stories I could tell, probably go on for an hour or two, but when you talk about actually visual, I have one story that I just can't explain. I don't know what this is. It could be very easy to explain. I'm just my ignorant mind can't figure it out, I guess. But we were coming up out of some woods in South Carolina one night. I hunt South Carolina a fair amount, even though I live in North Carolina. And we were hunting some game lands down there. And anybody that lives upstate South Carolina, you kind of know what the roads look like going in game lands. They're all dirt roads. They kind of wind back in there, these little ridges and hollers. And it was early season. I'd say it's probably, end of September, something like that. So we're coming up on time of the year. And one thing about these roads, just to give a context of kind of what it looked like, on the sides of these roads, there's these little bitty weeds that grow up about 3 foot tall, and they're just straight up stalks with these little leaves on them. I call them like a pencil weed. They just look like big tall pencils, and they grow up about 3 foot tall, and they kind of lean into the road. So you take a 1-lane road and narrow it down pretty tight when you're driving. And these things are always brushing the side of your truck, but they get 3 foot tall. That's pretty important. They're all about the exact same height. Well, me and a buddy, he's in the passenger seat. We just got done hunting. We're coming up out of these swampy bottoms, driving up this little ridge, and we take a hard left turn. We take another hard right turn, coming up on another left turn, but I haven't got to it yet. And as soon as I make that right turn, my headlights hit something about 40 yards in front of the truck, right there in the middle of the next upcoming left-hand turn. And it's standing on the right-hand side of the road, about 4 foot off the road in those pencil weeds. Well, those weeds are right at 3 foot tall. And this thing was just a little more than twice the height of those weeds. So 6 to 7 foot, I would imagine. And it's either a real dirty white or it's gray. I didn't see it that well, but it wasn't black. It wasn't brown, any of that. It was either white that was dirty or a gray color. And when I first seen it, I thought it was like the tail end of a deer. When when they run away, they got the white rear end, their white tail stuck up in there. And that's kind of what I thought it was. But then I noticed it wasn't really moving. And then my brain clicked, well, deer's not much taller than these weeds, and this is way taller. And so it's kind of come up on a little bit closer. I get about 30 foot or so away. The thing turns, and what it was actually facing me. And so when it turned, it got skinnier, because if you're looking at a man straight on, you're looking at the width of his shoulders. And it had that shape. It kind of went up to a shoulder shape and then narrowed up to the top of his head, but it didn't have flat shoulders like a man does. It just went from the crown of the shoulders to the crown of the head. So it turned, so it got skinnier like a man would if you turned, broadside to you, and took a step off to the woods. One step, it went about 5 or 6 foot into the brush. So you could just see bits and pieces of it through the weeds or the brush or whatever. And there was a real steep embankment going downhill, and it stepped off the next step and went down that. So we pulled up beside it and rolled the window down, and my buddy pulls out his coon light. You're thinking this thing's got to be just right here in front of us. He shines his light in there, and at first he sees nothing. And then he saw, wait a minute, I see something. And I lean up and look over his shoulder, and probably 30 or 40 feet down in the woods, you can see it, and it's kind of behind some green brush. And all you see is this white gray thing just kind of move. It's almost like it's standing there, kind of leaning and looking towards us. Never seen any eye shine. I never seen a facial feature like a nose or anything like that. It was just, I don't know what it was. Just being completely honest with you.
That's crazy.
I don't want to say it was Bigfoot. I just know what it wasn't. And anything I've ever seen in the woods before, it was not.
Wow. That would certainly make the hair on the back of your neck stand up for sure.
Yeah.
Have you ever dabbled in any of the competition stuff as far as coon hunting is concerned?
Yeah, I did. I tried that. Let's see, this has probably been 10, 12 years ago. I went on a couple competition hunts. I'm a proponent of there being competition hunts. I do think there should be, because it's really good to promote the sport, keep the sport as a sport, so when outsiders or antis look at raccoon hunting, they see just what they assume is just rednecks out, messing around. So it legitimizes it for people who are not into competition or into coon hunting. But I tried it. It wasn't really for me, I guess you would say. I'm a highly competitive guy. And at the time, I didn't really have a competition geared dog. A lot of times, competition coon hounds, they hunt a little bit different than just a pleasure dog. And I had a pleasure dog. So I couldn't really compete. And if I don't stand a chance of winning, I didn't really want to participate, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. It makes perfect sense. I was going to ask you earlier, and I just was going back over my notes and was looking. Yeah, as far as the Walker hounds, do you have a little history on the breed? Would you happen to know, where those dogs originated from?
Well, I'm not real up on that. A lot of it's just stuff that I have heard and kind of read, and whether it's the official, I don't really know. But basically, every hound except for the plot, from my understanding, reverts back to Europe, and well, the plot goes back to Germany, but a lot of them go back to English dogs, English hounds of some kind. All of the breeds do. And from what I understand, the Walker dog goes back to the foxhound, originates from there. I can't remember the name of the guys. Somebody out there will, but there was a dog that supposedly started the Walker line called Tennessee Lead, I think it was. And to hear him described in color, it didn't really sound like a Walker to me. But some guy named Walker had him or bought him or something, and it was supposed to be this phenomenal dog. And forgive me, you just have to look him up, Tennessee Lead, to read the story on him. I don't know the details off the top of my head, but from what I understand, he's the dog that kind of started the American line of Walker hounds, and he had went back to a foxhound, from my understanding.
That's interesting. What advice would you offer for a new hound hunter, somebody who's looking at looking at a breeder, looking at different equipment, gear, training? What would be your advice for somebody in that situation, looking to get into hound hunting, coon hunting, what have you?
One big thing I see this mistake being made quite often, and I just kind of want to warn people and have them think about this. If you're looking to get any kind of hound hunting, and we'll focus on the raccoon side. One thing is find somebody to go with before you ever buy a piece of equipment or ever buy a dog. Just find somebody to go with and go as many times as you can, not just once, because a lot of times you'll go once and maybe it's a perfect hunt. You tree something and it's just fun. You don't get to see any of the hard stuff or any of the bad things, that can be frustrating on that hunt. So you want to go several times so you can experience as much of the total package as you possibly can. And that gives you the idea whether you want to even pursue going through with this and trying to be a hound hunter or a raccoon hound hunter. So then you do that and you decide, okay, I want to get a dog and I want to get into this. The biggest pitfall that I see out of a lot of people, and I think the biggest key to hound hunting in general, is patience. This is a long game. This ain't an instant reward. There's a lot of time and effort's got to be put into it to get out of it what you really want to get out of it. So you got to be very patient. And one of the problems with that is I'll see a lot of guys who are new to this. They'll start out by getting like an 8-week-old puppy, which is fine and good if you got the time, like Redfern grows, to train your dog and do drags and do what you got to do. If you can live and breathe that dog and train it, that's fine. But a lot of guys are family men. They don't have time to train a dog like really needs to be done. So the dog doesn't get the proper training when it comes up to be a year and 2 years old. It's not trained well enough to hunt and perform like maybe the guy that they had went with before his dog did, who's been doing it for 30 years or whatever. And it's not a fault on the person in the beginning, but they started out with a major project and got over their head. And so I would recommend anybody that's new to it, go out and find you a 2 or 3 year old dog that is already doing it. You got to pay a little more for it. Or maybe you go out and find a 10-year-old dog that's kind of going into retirement, slowing down, but still knows how to get out there and do it. A lot of guys will sell a dog when they get, they're wanting the young, fast, new dog. And so an older dog, they're willing to sell to someone and let it slow down in life. But what that does is it allows you to immediately to go out without any kind of experience and any kind of training and just go have fun. And if you're having fun, you will want to stay in the sport more than if you're trying to train a puppy and you're getting frustrated. A lot of guys get frustrated and quit. And there's two sides to this coin. One, it's going to keep you interested in it. But two, we got to be realistic about this. We're taking something's life and using it to fulfill something we want to. And it's only fair to the animal to give them the best shot to fulfill their potential as we can. And if we're new to the sport, just being completely honest, we are not really in a dog, or a lot of times we're not. So the dog can't reach their full potential. And so just for the sake of what's best for the dog, I'd say leave the puppies to someone who has some experience training, or at least the patience and time, or knows that they're going to dedicate to it. And just get you a dog, like I said, a 10-year-old dog that is getting low and slow, maybe. You still get out there and do it, and you're giving it a new fresh breath of life. You're someone who will take it hunting. When the guy I had before may have lost a little interest. So you're giving it another lease on life, so to speak. And then once you've got some years in it and you say, okay, I know now more what it's going to take, the patience, the time, I'm going to dedicate to a pup, then go get one, and train your own hound. I've done it before. I've got pups and not had the proper time or maybe even enough hunting land to do it. And the dog ends up 3 or 4 years old and it's not doing what I want it to. And honestly, I feel guilty. It's my fault that dog didn't reach its potential and I got frustrated, So I would say just be patient, kick back, get your dog that's already doing it to begin with. And then later, when you know you're ready and you have the time, get the pup and start learning how to train one.
That makes perfect sense. Is it harder and harder? And I live down in South Texas, and most of the land is privately owned. I'm in the bird dog world, and it's harder and harder to find areas to hunt. Do y'all find that in North Carolina or South Carolina?
Yeah, well, where I live is getting especially hard to find land to even hunt an experienced dog on, much less train. And I find a lot of guys around the country getting that way, but then there's pockets where it's not an issue at all. I have friends in Arkansas that have 10,000 acre farms they can hunt, and then, like me here, I literally had this conversation 2 days ago with my buddy Kim. We were hanging out. I told him, I said, man, I'm probably done with the pup thing for several years unless something comes up, because locally, my last dog that I tried to train was kind of a failure. Honestly, just putting it out there for your listeners. She got up to about 4 years old. She could run a track better than any dog I've got, but she never would tree. And literally, I just did not have the land to where I could take her out locally here 4, 5, 6 nights a week and push her hard to train her to get her through that. And it's all my fault. Some of them could be genetics, but I believe a lot of it was my fault. I didn't have the land to train her on. And around here, people moving in, there's developments going up everywhere. Our game land keeps getting smaller and smaller. Plus, what little there is gets hunted a bunch, so there's not a lot of game on it. And that's like one of the reasons why I travel to South Carolina is they have a little more game land and a little more game there, but it's getting worse down there too. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of that's going to depend on where you live, but that's another tip for someone that's getting into it. Say you were wanting to rabbit hunt, you can rabbit hunt on 10 acres. You can't really coon hunt on 10 acres. You need, I like 50 plus, realistically 100 plus acres to turn my dog loose on.
Yeah, that certainly would be frustrating, to get a hound, like you said, 4 years old and not have the land to get her to her potential. And we deal with that down here too. Yes, sir. Where do you see the future of hound hunting? I know, I participate in NAVDA hunt test, which is North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. I know in several states they've had anti-legislation that were, they're trying to shut that kind of stuff down as far as field trials, just certain things like that in the dog world. And I'm not sure on your end. Do you see any of that on y'all's end? As far as hound hunting in general, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, we're really at a tipping point here. We could go either way, and we're way too close to losing rights than we want to be. It's getting pretty scary. There's a lot of states. I don't remember which states, but I feel like Montana or something. Somebody out there, Montana, Colorado, something. They took away hunting with bear hunting with hounds not too long ago. I know Oregon and Washington State's always got some tight reins going on. California does too. The East Coast here, especially the Southeast, we've not been too bad. There's the hound community is fairly strong here, and the Midwest is too. But I know even like Vermont, they come under a lot of scrutiny about a year ago with the bear stuff. And so I definitely see the riots. They're after them. And, one thing that a lot of social media hound platforms are pushing hard, and I'm glad they are, is hound hunting is kind of, we all know that the anti-hunters are out there and they want to get rid of all hunting. Even the guys out there trophy deer hunting, they want to get rid of everything. And hound hunters have always kind of been the ugly stepchild, to hunting in general. And we always see hound hunting as kind of the gate. And the antis are always in here, and they think, well, if we can get the gate open, if we can take down the hound hunters, which it's easy to paying them out to be someone bad, with some Sarah McLachlan music, commercial, whatever. If we can knock them out, then we've got the gate open and we can start going in here. Next thing you know, you already see it. States don't want you to use trail cameras or this, that, and the other. They kind of chip away at it. And hound hunting is one of the first things they're going to take. And so there's a movement out there. You can check out the hashtag guard the gate, and it's really protecting hound hunters. And, if you're a deer hunter and you have no interest in hunting anything with a hound, you still need to at least support the hound hunters. Whenever there's a that comes up trying to ban or change hound hunting, take away any part of the right, you need to oppose it, go vote against it, whatever, even though you have no intention of doing it, because there's a trickle down effect. And once they take that, one day they're going to be coming for yours too, So as hunters in general, everybody's got a group together, and hound hunting is where they're going to come first for this stuff. And I will say over the last 5 or 6 years, through social media, people like what you're doing, through the YouTube channels, there's probably a dozen strictly coon hunt and hound related podcasts out there now. A lot of stuff where guys are really jumping on board with the media, social media, and pushing the hound stuff. And they're doing a really good job of putting the honesty of what it really is, the tradition, not the harvest, and educating people that it's not such a bad thing. And I mean, you see it all the time. The guys that were against it, maybe they were just deer hunters, whatever, and they come, at least. So as much as the antis are after us and we're getting close to losing rights, on the opposite end, I really see a lot of houndsmen stepping up with social media, just like what you're doing with this podcast here, pushing and promoting and educating people on hunting with dogs. And it's a great thing.
Yes, sir. I know one of the things down that I've seen, it could be positive or negative, but social media, hog hunting down here in South Texas is a huge thing. And, you'll have some new boots, get them a pack of dogs, whether they trained them themselves or they bought them. And, they go out there and they're showing, a pack of dogs around a hog, and they cut the catch dogs loose, and, the dogs are basically tearing the pig apart, and it's being posted on social media. And you'll see a lot of the more experienced guys say, this is what's ruining our sport is, y'all posting this stuff up on social media. And, of course you got the antis that, just have a field day with that kind of stuff. Do you see any of that in coon hunting, on y'all's end as far as that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, well, just educate for your listeners that may not know what, how it goes when you're coon hunting. The coon's in the top of a tree and it can be 100 foot up, and you have to make a shot, get that coon, fall out of the tree and harvest it. And, just the reality of it is sometimes there's some life in it. You try your best to harvest the animal, and done deal when it hits the ground. Sometimes it has some life to it. And then your dogs, being dogs, they get in the middle of it. You try to avoid it. You end it all as quick as you possibly can as a sportsman, for the dog, for the raccoon, you just try to end it all quick as you can. But there are people out there that, will film it and they'll put it on Facebook and so on and so forth. And literally I have seen, I won't give the names because I don't want to drive traffic to them, but I have literally seen some of my friends' videos used on antis websites or antis YouTube channels, making fun of this sport and this, that, and the other. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's so-and-so's video that he had on his Facebook. And so I've literally seen the evidence used completely out of context to win hearts and minds of the antis. So that's a major deal. Film it, show your buddies when you get to work Monday morning or whatever. But when it comes to social media posting, even myself, I would film the raccoon fall from the tree on our YouTube videos and just, hit the ground, and that was it. A lot of times now we don't even film shooting it. I've got the footage, but I don't put it out there because you're literally loading the gun and hand it to the person who wants to use it against you. And I'm not going to give them no ammunition to shoot me with. Yeah.
Yes, sir. You kind of touched base on the fellowship end of it earlier. I follow a guy over in Oklahoma, and I know last year they had like a first annual Houndsman Days, and I think they're going for year 2 now. Do you guys ever partake of anything like that? I know in the past you've mentioned Autumn Oaks. Is that kind of atmosphere to where people just kind of come together and celebrate the hound life, the hound, people getting together and just enjoying it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's UKC, United Kennel Club. I mean, I'm sure you know them. Everybody, does. They've got the Coonhound program, and all these events kind of center around a big night hunt, competition hunt, what they call it. But there's so they'll take, like, this is literally the weekend we're recording this was Autumn Oaks up in Indiana, Richmond, Indiana. And it's like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And like each night they have a competition hunt, and you kind of move up the bracket to Saturday night and get to hunt for, the big prize and all. But all during those days, I mean, there's a fairground up there, and there's 5 or 6 other major coon hunts just like this around the country, different times of year. But each one of them, they'll be at a fairground, and during the day, there's food vendors, there's vendors selling different gear. So a lot of guys will go to them just to go get their new piece of gear or whatever. And then so all your buddies end up showing up there, and you bring your dogs and you walk around. And even if you're not in the big competition hunt every night, there's just it's like a big campfire that everybody gets to come to, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of great fellowship. They even got bench shows and treeing contests, and the entire weekend is really geared around celebrating coon hunting. But the core of it's about the competition. But yeah, there's so much to get into on those events and have so much fun and fellowship. And many years ago, it was just going to buy a piece of gear and see my buddies that maybe lived in that state that I didn't ever see. And then we used to then we got where we were setting up booths and selling some product and stuff, promoting the channel there. And I haven't been to them in a couple of years because the whole coronavirus thing was going on. But yeah, you've got the Autumn Oaks in Richmond, Indiana. That's a big one. The next one I guess we have coming up, you have Winter Classic. That's in Batesville, Mississippi. No, the next one is in Orangeburg, South Carolina. It's called the Grand American. That's in January. Then early February is Winter Classic in Batesville, Mississippi. And then another one I like to go to because it's local. It's not one of the biggest, but we have, and that's in Union, South Carolina, which is right in the heart of where I do a lot of my hunting. It's an hour and a half from my house. So I love to go to that one too. But there's dozens and dozens of other smaller ones, all over the country. So, yeah, if you're getting into coon hunting, look on UKC's website. They always have a itinerary of what's going on throughout the year, and find one of them and go to it because it's a good way to network too. I found buddies that I got to hunt with or mentor, a lot of stuff. It's a great fellowship.
That's awesome. Do you see many younger kids getting into it? I know you used to have a little platform on your YouTube channel where you would have these young guys, younger kids write in on getting into coon hunting and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I've got a file over here in my office. It's stacked full of papers. We called them kitten cooners, because a young coon's called a kitten. And it was just kids that they would literally write me a letter and draw me a picture of their dog, tell me about them and their dad and their dog and stuff. And it's amazing. I've got a lot of really nice letters from kids that I keep. I've kept every one of them. And so, yeah, I seen there was a lot of that going on. And one thing that really warms my heart is I've noticed a shift. I was talking about this with a buddy the other day, but publicly, I was actually wanting to make a video about this. So we'll cover this here if you have time.
Sure.
I'll just talk about it. One thing I've noticed over the last, say, 2 years is there seems to be a major influx of young, I will say 16 to 22-year-old age, right in there, coon hunters that, are hunting 6-7 nights a week. And I've even got them here locally, and where they're hunting, I have no clue. Like, I can't find the land to hunt that they do. I'm glad they got it. I wouldn't dare take it from them. And, but I'm just saying, like, wow, these guys are really hunting it up. And they keep posting on their social media, their TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. And somebody mentioned it to me, and it kind of struck me wrong. This was about a month or so ago. They said, you know what? These people never show the coon in the tree. They only show the dogs. And it was kind of insinuating that these people never tree raccoons. And, it's kind of what you do it for, is to tree the raccoons. But I remember saying to the guy, I'm like, well, that's not really important. It's about the dog. It's about the experience. So what I have seen is, I don't know whether these guys are treeing raccoons or not. Don't really care. But these guys, when they put these videos up, they are tickled to death to show their dog doing what the dog was bred to do. And to me, the last 10, 15 years, we've got more gearing towards the pride of the harvest at the hunt. And now I'm seeing these young kids showing pride toward the process, which is the dog. And that really encourages me. I really like that, because their priorities are in the right place.
Exactly. Seeing the dog work would be the best part for me. Anything after that would just be icing on the cake.
Exactly.
But that's awesome. Nick, I really appreciate your time this morning. It's been great visiting with you, and I'm just thrilled that you agreed to be a guest on the podcast. It's been great talking to you, and I really appreciate you giving us your insight on just coon hunting and the whole hound world in general.
Yes, sir, man. I really, it was an honor to come on here. I really appreciate the invitation and what you're doing with this podcast, man. I'm just like I was talking about earlier, guys are pushing hunting with dogs out there to the public. You're doing a fantastic job. Keep it up. If there's anything I can ever do to help you along, just holler at me, and just keep pushing this out there and letting people know we're good people and doing good things.
Yes, sir. I definitely will. Thank you very much.
All right, man. Thanks.